Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with your post Thanksgiving meal hot take. Final one of the evening. Stand up to your racist family at Thanksgiving, UVA student paper op ed urges. Now, as much as I believe Trump is going to win this, there's still a chance he might not. And I urge you not to get mad at YouTubers who go, there's a chance Trump's going to lose or that I don't think he's going to win or whatever. Look, you have to be realistic about this. Trump has to get the SCOTUS with 3 cases and they all have to go in his favor. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I'm pretty confident he can do it. It looks really good. The evidence is mounting. There's still at least a week, possibly more. But, I don't know what other tricks the opposition has up its sleeve. But this kind of stuff is worse than the opposition. Look, the opposition, if they win, they're going to be severely damaged. Okay? And what we need to do, I'll classify it as the non-Leftist, because it's not just the right that needs to do this. It's people moderate, people basically who are not radical Marxist or neoliberals, which is what we're fighting against essentially, or anybody in between. Now, there are people in between who are like kind of mildly socialist, but they're okay with the neoliberals. They just don't see the harm in a little bit more socialism, a little bit more socialism, a little bit more of this. Most of them are either too well off and they're insulated, or they're just connected well enough that they're not going to be harmed by anything. It takes a lot for people to switch their political convictions. I mean, it took a lot for people in San Francisco, for instance, to finally start leaving the city. I mean, think about you having a business there for 40 years or some ridiculously long time, and you just love the city and it's great, but, the last 5 years, it's just people pooping on the streets. The government won't do a damn thing to help you. They won't even let the police arrest people. You've had robbery after robbery, and you're close to retirement anyway, and you finally go, I can't take this. I love this city, but I have to leave. There's no other choice. So I understand why people are very reluctant to change. As you get older, it's harder to change. But what I think we need are the following. The first thing we need is we kind of need our own internet. I don't know if that's possible technically, but we need our own section of the internet. I mean, the internet itself is pretty vast. So people more technically versed will know better than I, but maybe it's the decentralization concept that I've heard a lot about but don't really understand. Maybe we just need our own version of Google. Right now I found a search engine called Yippee, Yippy. Now it's a right-wing search engine, basically. I mean, it doesn't have right-wing bias, but I think the guy who runs it is, more conservative. And, so like if that became, the Google for all the non-leftist, and I'm talking the Trump supporters, you got 74 million of those, and anybody who have said, people like Tim Pool who say, I'm not a right-wing guy, but I cannot support the neolibs and the radical left. If we can get those people on board, and I think most of them would willingly come on board, and use our purchasing powers, because 74 million people, even in the United States, that's a lot of people, and a lot of purchasing power, right? So you're talking that's at least like a fifth of the country. Probably when you add in the moderates, it's at least a fourth. Now, there's a lot of people who are apolitical, and we need to bring them in. We need to warn them of the dangers and bring them in. So creating a platform like that would help because, it would be cool and new, and the internet's all about the new. And the key thing would be not to sell it to Silicon Valley, who would instantly just absorb it into their big mess of stuff, right? We need a competitor to Twitter. We have one. We have two, actually, Parler and Gab. We need a Facebook rival. We sort of have one. Minds is definitely a competitor. It's not nearly as popular yet, but it's a really good site. I like it a lot. You should definitely check it out. And we need these sites and people to kind of support each other in this endeavor. Because if we can get a network that's viable for the people not on the neolib or extreme left, a network that they don't control, then people can make a living, right? Which is important. Now, they'll come after us and try to outlaw things, but our money would be our power. Our purchasing power, would be the power. And we need our own version of eBay. We need our own version, basically all the big sites. We need our own versions of that. We need competitors to sort of band together and not be like them, not to censor everything, but to work together to build a better internet and a better big tech, an alternate big tech, if you will. Oh, and of course YouTube. Now we have rivals, tons of rivals for them, right? We've got BitChute is the biggest one, I think, and Library and Rumble I'm hearing about. I haven't even really tried those. Dailymotion, which I got kicked off of. Brighteon. Is there more? Well, Minds, you can upload videos. So we need all these alternative platforms. And then you got to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the sort of extreme left keep indoctrinating people at a precipitous rate. Now, part of that is in the schools, which we do have to get in and try to undo some of that damage or reverse it as best we can. That's going to take a long time. There are school unions to fight. The system is stacked against us in that. Trump getting reelected, he could maybe revamp it. He already started to with the 1776 commission, but that's if Biden gets in, that's done. That'll just be over, and that'll be it. He'll go right to critical race theory, and this is critical race theory. This article here. So we need to educate people. We need to recruit people. Not so much, hey, get all red pilled and scream on the internet that Trump got rigged. Trump got rigged out of an election. But we need them to understand how dangerous critical race theory is, how dangerous radical Marxism is, and to basically start turning the tide in that respect. And that's more of a long-term project, but we need to think about that. Now, for myself, I'm fortunate in that most of my work is entertainment based and sort of does that on its own. The downside of that is it's hard for me to get my books into the hands of people who might read them and be changed by them, because the moment they read Wokeness, a novel, and the premise of it, they go, "Oh, you hate left people. You hate people on the left, you scumbag." Same thing with Hollywoke, another novel. Although, I've had some luck. Read my reviews on Amazon. Me and Christian wrote the first book. If you read some of the reviews, you can see people kind of, at least one critic kind of going, yeah, it kind of made me mad, but kind of that was the point. Like he was thinking about it. It made him think. So, in that respect, a guy like me, on the one hand, I'm a little bit insulated, and what I do, if I can get it in the right hands, can transform people. But on the other hand, I depend upon fans to buy my work. So, I can make a really good living with the 74 million or so people plus that already exist. But not everybody can. I mean, it's different for somebody who, I don't know, is a plumber or, you know, does like real physical labor and builds things and stuff, because the pragmatic sort of jobs, they're first off, they shouldn't be driven by critical race theory either way, but that's coming. It's coming down the pike with a Biden presidency. Even with a Trump presidency, it's going to be tried. Like, Trump is only one man. He could get in, and that critical race theory could still be around, still screwing people over. Look at the Democratic states and the beer virus response. I mean, you know, with a guy like Trump, he can't cure it all. He's only the president, and in that context, you know, he played by the rules. Now, I don't expect Biden to. In fact, if we built all this stuff and started to make real headway right away, I have no doubt Silicon Valley would throw money to the Democrats, and Biden wouldn't have a problem, you know, squashing everything, trying to squash everything anyway. I don't think he'd have a problem with using the Insurrection Act if the protests got out of hand. Oh, yeah, he'd do it in a second, because he knows the media will tout him as a hero. They say, well, he had no choice but to use the Insurrection Act to put down this insurrection of Trump fans. They're all evil and horrible. So that's something we got to be aware of. And another thing, strategically, I think we need to do is what the left kind of does, is control the opposition. So if we do get a platform that's viable, we need to also have viable alternatives for the left and their echo chambers, because they kind of do that to people not on the left. They control, Silicon Valley controls so much, you know, and you look at Fox News, that's an example of controlled opposition, right? You know, people said that and didn't believe it, but now you can kind of see it, right? So, you know, if we could get a big enough platform and they could buy up, say, Mastodon and Tumblr, they should keep them going. Let the babies have their left-wing echo chambers, but we can muck around with them and kind of push them in the right, quote unquote, forgive the pun, direction a little bit, and blunt their more violent urges, which is what they say they're doing for the right, but they're so draconian about it, and so, you know, hit you over the head with it. It never works. It pisses everybody off. So, and when I say blunt their worst urges, I simply mean keep them from committing acts of violence. I mean, you know, the Antifa stuff is bad. It's bad. It's really bad. And they don't see it as a bad. They see it as a diversity of tactics. But this stand up to your racist family at Thanksgiving is a typical example of sort of leftist thinking, where they kind of take their agenda and sort of hammer it in against people who, you know, they're just trying to live their lives. So, you know, it says something like, when we sit silent over our uncle's QAnon rants or our high school friends' xenophobic comments, she continues, it shows that we value our own comfort over what we know to be our ethical duty. So she is basically espousing you to confront people whose views you disagree with. I would say, if this happened to you, that you would just not engage with this. She admonishes readers to prove their moral principles are more important than their relationship with racist, quote unquote. No matter what the outcome, standing up for your principles disrupts the presumption of agreement so often assumed by bigots, concludes Camp. Hateful beliefs may continue, but at the very least, you can make it clear they are not welcome to at least one person at the dinner table. Again, don't engage, would be my advice. Someone like this has been indoctrinated. They're probably coming out of college and they read this and they're like, ooh, I can't wait to confront Uncle So-and-so. By the way, I'm sort of the crazy uncle in the family now. Uh, so, I don't push my beliefs on people. If I had a relative who came up to me and started screaming at me about critical race theory, my reaction would be, what are you doing? It's Thanksgiving. Um, I just here for turkey and I no politics at the holidays. I would say, right? This is family time. If you want to discuss something with me, you could call me up at a different time. Make it hard for them, because ultimately, I think when you look at a lot of college kids who get caught up in this nonsense, they don't like to do work. It's the whole point of their virtue signaling. It's very easy. They want to score these points and score them quickly, effectively, and then go right back to their bubble, and then tell all their friends how I told him. So even if you get a bunch of nonsense, I would just ignore it. What's it going to get you to argue with your niece or nephew or whatever? She also says, today's progressives have developed a savior complex that has become so sensitive, diluting the severity of real instances of xenophobia, sexism, and racism. This is Devin, I can't read his last name, talking to Campus Reform, calling white progressives to action at Thanksgiving, turns social activism into a game, eliciting frivolous accusations and burning bridges with loved ones. Oh, he's criticizing them. As this piece pins this task on white people, it seems that people of color need to be saved by our white friends. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of racist. If the purpose of activism is to make change, telling your Uncle Steve he's a white supremacist surely won't win you a Nobel Prize. Yeah, it won't do anything except probably annoy Uncle Steve. If my relative, one of my cousins or something, started ranting about this stuff and calling me all sorts of names, I wouldn't don't give him the ammo. Not that I would, but you know what I mean? Like, don't argue with them. I mean, don't agree with them either, obviously, but just be like, listen, it's Thanksgiving. Can we just eat and not talk about politics? How are you doing? That kind of thing. It also doesn't make any sense to engage in an argument with someone, somebody 20 years your junior, probably doesn't have the critical thinking tools, that you do. They think they do, because they went to college for half a semester. But and I was like that too. So, but I wasn't too obnoxious. I mean, I didn't start these kinds of arguments. I wasn't a critical race theorist. But this is kind of what we're up against, and this is in some ways more insidious, than the actual loss of the election, if that happens. I don't think it will, because this will still be around either way. And this isn't going away by one election, and it probably won't go away after 4 years. The trend will end. I look forward to that. Oh, dear Lord, let the trend end. I think that's coming. That's coming real soon. I think that's one of the, if there's any good byproduct of a Biden presidency, I think it's likely to hasten the end of the trend. The trend of being woke. I think it'll end. It'll end hard. And suddenly all these media companies and social media companies will be scrambling for the next thing. And that may finally be the anti-woke coming to fruition, because they will still be, engaged. Whereas everybody else will just be exhausted and like, oh, I'm out. Politics so boring. The anti-woke are coming. So take heart. Take heart, Trump supporters. I think we're going to win. And if we don't, there's always a backup plan.